Can you fly a powered parachute over town? Can you fly over your neighborhood and show your friends and family what you do without taking them to your airport or field? Well, in this episode of the Powered Parachute Show, we talk about the rules and regulations pertaining to flying over populated and congested areas. And if you stick around to the end, I'll tell you about the one thing that isn't in the federal aviation regulations that everyone flying anything from a powered paraglider to a helicopter needs to know about flying over cities. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you tuning in for another show, and if you're a subscriber, I appreciate you twice as much. By the way, if you're not quite a subscriber yet and you want to be appreciated twice as much too, get to it and subscribe today. I'm back in the sky in Florida. I have to say that winter flying here is still chilly oftentimes, but it is certainly enjoyable if you dress for success. Flying over town is something a lot of pilots dream of doing, but questions of legality and practicality abound. Hopefully, I'll be able to answer many of your questions here. If I miss something, make sure to mention it in the comments below. So, the big question is it legal? And the typical answer to a question about legality is, well, it depends. Let's walk through that. The three main things it depends upon is whether you are flying an ultralight or a certified aircraft, what exactly you are flying over, and the airspace you are flying in. If you are flying an ultralight, read that as a single-place, unregistered ultralight vehicle, which could be a powered parachute or a powered paramotor trike or any ultralight for that matter, the answer is no. In fact, the regulations are pretty clear. Part 103, Section 103.15, Operations over Congested Areas says, no person may operate an ultralight vehicle over any congested area of a city, town, or settlement, or over any open-air assembly of persons. Well, that's pretty clear, right? Except what is a congested area of a city look like? Isn't a city pretty much a congested area? Well, yes and no. Obviously, New York City is a congested area, but even within and around New York City, there are some pretty large green spaces. Do I recommend taking off and flying over those green spaces? Well, not exactly, but you could take off and fly within the confines of a lot of urban green spaces without bothering the FAA as long as you stay within the boundaries of the green space and out of the boundaries of the controlled airspace. But that may be kind of tough because that is another rule that ultralights have to pay special attention to. Again, back to the federal aviation regulations pertaining to ultralights, Part 103. This time it's Section 103.17, which talks about operations in certain airspace. This section states that no person may operate an ultralight within Class A, Class B, Class C, or Class D airspace, or within the lateral boundaries of the surface area of Class E airspace designated for an airport, unless that person has prior authorization from the ATC facility having jurisdiction over that airspace. With major airports near major cities, it's this airspace rule that will get you in trouble just as fast as the congestion rule if you are flying anything defined as an ultralight. To be clear, note that it says you can get prior authorization from the air traffic control facility. And some ATC facilities are friendly to ultralight aircraft as long as they are flown in out-of-the-way areas of their airspace. But it does take that prior authorization. So was that complicated enough for you? Now let's talk about two-place and numbered powered parachutes. What can pilots of those aircraft do? Well, guess what? Again, it depends. But overall, there are a lot more options for sport pilots flying in-numbered powered parachutes. First of all, there are no rules saying that in-numbered powered parachutes can't fly over congested areas. However, that doesn't mean that you get to fly into town and buzz over your neighbor's house. Darn it, right? There are plenty of rules that certified pilots of all kinds of aircraft have to pay attention to. Let's start with minimum safe altitude rules. That's the biggest buzzkill. Instead of Part 103, the ultralight rules, certified pilots need to refer to Part 91, General Operating and Flight Rules. And specifically, pilots need to look at Section 91.119, Minimum Safe Altitudes. Let's take a look-see. So it starts with, except when necessary for takeoff or landing, no person may operate an aircraft below the following altitudes. And then they have a list of paragraphs. Paragraph A is the first one we want to look at, which refers to anywhere. For anywhere, pilots need to stay at an altitude allowing, if a power unit fails, an emergency landing without undue hazard to persons or property on the surface. Now, some of you may believe that you have mad skills and can land in someone's backyard or in a parking lot, which is certainly possible as long as trees, fences, kids, power lines, and light poles don't become a problem. The best bet, just for common sense and legality, is to stay high enough so that you can find an appropriate place to land if your engine unilaterally decides to go to quiet mode. But don't worry, this next rule will get you pretty high anyway, at least in altitude. Paragraph B of section 191.119 refers specifically to over congested areas. Paragraph B states that over a congested area of a city, town, or settlement, or over any open air assembly of persons, an aircraft must maintain an altitude of 1,000 feet above the highest obstacle within a horizontal radius of 2,000 feet of the aircraft. Holy smokes, what does that even mean? Well, generally, it means that you have to stay 1,000 feet above everything. But if something is higher than the average, it gets a protected area 1,000 feet above it and 2,000 feet around it. If you're further than 2,000 feet away from it, you can go lower again. Well, at least down to that 1,000 feet above the shorter stuff. I hope that's clear. Next is the airspace over and around airports near town. Bigger cities have bigger airports. And while it is possible for n-numbered powered parachutes to enter into some of that airspace, it isn't very likely to be legal. And here's why. First, most powered parachute sport pilots don't have the logbook endorsements to go into airspace associated with air traffic control towers. But say that you do. In that case, you have to be sure that your aircraft has the right equipment to enter control tower airspace. That includes a powerful enough radio to talk to the tower from a few miles away. It also may mean that your powered parachute has to be equipped with ADS-B out. ADS-B out allows air traffic controllers to watch your powered parachute move around. It is now mandated in aircraft that are flying in certain kinds of airspace. Those kinds of airspace include some old friends: Class A, B, and C airspace, Class E airspace at or above 10,000 feet mean sea level, and that excludes airspace at or below 2,500 feet above ground level. That exception is for mountainous areas, so you can get over the mountains. Within 30 nautical miles of a Class B primary airport, and that 30 nautical mile circle is commonly known as the Mode C Veil. And finally, above the ceiling and within the lateral boundaries of Class B or Class C airspace up to 10,000 feet, which, if you remember, puts you right into Class E airspace at or above 10,000 feet mean sea level, which in other words means no, you can't fly over the top of Class B or Class C airspace without ADS-B out. This doesn't cover very much of the airspace that powered parachutes normally want to fly in, but it covers a whole lot of airspace close to bigger cities. For example, those 30 nautical mile radius rings around airports such as LAX and O'Hare cover a lot of terrain, something close to 3,742 square miles. It's a lot. If you check the description, I'm going to put a list of the 37 Class B airports in America. It turns out to be an awful lot of airports with an awful lot of square miles. Do you live someplace like Indianapolis or Tucson and are wondering what your airspace is like? Well, let me tell you. You have your own 10-mile radius rings over town. That's a mere 314 square miles of can't fly. Now, ADS-B out is a problem that money can solve. However, it may not be worth the hassle unless your home airport is somewhere that requires it. For example, there are about a dozen airports in the St. Louis area that have found themselves within Mode C Veil, but that's another topic for another day. But let's not focus on the big cities. There are plenty of smaller towns in America that are literally flyover country. With an n-numbered powered parachute, you can safely and legally fly over many of them as long as you stay over 1,000 feet above town and leave yourself a safe place to land if your engine quits. So that's still pretty cool. You just need to check your sectional, your aviation map, to make sure that you're okay. So you can see the answer truly was, it depends. It actually depends on a lot. And as promised, here is the thing that everyone flying over urban or suburban areas needs to pay attention to. There are local and state laws. While the FAA may not mind if you take off from a local park, the city may take a dim view of you flying there. Cities, counties, and even states don't have any jurisdiction in the sky, but the city fathers and mothers can make ordinances that prevent you from taking off from or landing on certain places. Those rules vary from state to state and from town to town. So there it is. I went through it kind of quick, but the magic of video is that you can watch the whole thing again if something went by too fast and you really want to understand the whole thing. I also have some notes below. Finally, make a comment if I missed something or if you believe I got something wrong. And if you are interested in powered parachute flight instruction in either the Midwest or in Florida, please visit the link to easyflight.com in the description. And please remember to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and blue skies.